Hello viewers, this is Umbra Racing here, and welcome to the channel. So this is July 14th of the Mosport Arrive and Drive Kart Racing League. We're on to race 5, and we're back to our typical qualifying format for the race on this day. So we have our typical practice and quali session before jumping into our pre-final, which we're watching right now, and then the final shortly after. So we have two racing sessions for the video today, two longer sessions of course, and you'll probably notice that we pulled out of the pits in the complete opposite direction this time around, and that's actually because we're doing the reverse short track layout. And to be honest, I actually quite like this layout. I feel that, typically speaking, when you're driving this track the normal way around, I feel like you don't have to rely on your brakes all that much. You can definitely get away with lifting and coasting throughout the majority of the corners to try to get some optimal times down. I think you probably only have maybe one big braking zone in the normal way around. Whereas with this version of the track, I don't think you can get away with lifting and coasting all that much. At least I found that I wasn't able to do that all that well. It definitely feels like you have to brake for the majority of the corners, so you have to be a lot more mindful of what you're doing, where your braking points are, and your turning in points and whatnot. So this race definitely felt a lot more technical and a lot more interesting than usual. So practice and quali went pretty well for me. I managed to qualify in P4 this time around. I'm actually right behind Burning Rubber, who's in P3 with his red neck protector. Overtaking pylons are on the exit of the S's here, which we just passed. So right up on the straight, I try to bump draft Burning Rubber here to try to catch up to P1 and P2. On the entry to the hill, I took a wide line and then did a little bit of a cutback right here to try to get the position away from Burning Rubber. So just checking the side, he's still alongside me here, but he slots in as we approach this corner here. Get a little bit of wheel spin on the exit, but nothing too severe. And then as we round this corner into the start-stop straight, got the move done, and we are up into P3. So as we finish the first lap here, practice actually went pretty interesting. It was actually quite interesting because I've never driven on this version of the track before. The reverse layout is definitely very interesting, like I mentioned before. One corner in particular is this one as you're coming up to the top of the hill, because this is a blind uphill right-hander. So approaching this corner the first time around definitely felt a little bit intimidating because, again, you can't really see what's on the other side, so you kind of just have to be very confident with what you're doing going up to the top. I tried to apply my usual strategy of kind of lifting and coasting for maybe like a half second or a second. It felt a little bit weird at first, but after a few laps, I was definitely adjusting a bit better. But as a result of not really having a whole lot of time to really practice and kind of like drill in the proper lines and technique for this version of the track, like I was definitely trying to still figure things out throughout the pre-final and even to a lesser extent in the final as well. But on to lap 3 now. Set a 52.0. So the lap times are definitely improving. Of course, your lap 2 is definitely going to be faster than your lap 1 for obvious reasons. But we're going to be seeing that I get a little bit more comfortable throughout the race. I was feeling that the kart was actually quite nice. The braking felt good. It felt very stable through the corners. I think the traction was very nice. So I was definitely getting a lot more, I guess, confidence as the race went on. And just rounding these corners actually felt quite nice in this kart. As you can see, I'm kind of reeling in P2 and P1. As the race goes on, you can see they're getting a bit closer and closer. We set a 51.9 on the third lap here, so the time is definitely getting down. So as you come down, and obviously you can see P2 and P1 are constantly fighting. They're going about too wide through a lot of these corners, so they are slowing each other down and making themselves more vulnerable for an approach for me. So seeing that only made things a bit more exciting, because then I felt getting beyond P3 would have been possible. So we're on to the final lap now. So we set my fastest time of the pre-final here, which is a 51.5, which was definitely not too bad. At this point, you can see that P2 and P1 are much closer than they were before. So coming up to the top of the hill here, you can see right here, driving a pretty decent line here. I feel like there's a bit more time that I can gain on that corner. I think there's something I need to do a little bit different there, but I think overall, the line was not too bad. You can see that P1 and P2 are actually quite close at this point, but it's not going to be enough for me to challenge their positions here as we enter the start-stop straight on the final lap. And then we finish in P3. So we're in a podium position here. My first time finishing in P3, so this was actually a pretty good result. I felt that the day actually started off quite well. Again, like I mentioned, I had a pretty good practice and quality session, despite being in unfamiliar territory here. I definitely felt like a fish out of water for this layout of the track. But, you know, the session went well, and the result here for the pre-final was quite good. And it actually set me up quite nicely for the final race as well. So starting off the final race of the day, at this point I was feeling pretty good. I was feeling pretty good and was feeling pretty confident about this race because I was starting off in a podium position. I've never been up this far in the grid before, so it definitely felt good to be up here and potentially have some good competition between P1 and P2 here. So I definitely had my eye on the prize, was definitely focusing on P1 and P2. That was essentially my goal, to try to get at least one more overtake, something like that. Maybe even potentially go for a P1 finish. But either way, either result would have been fine for me. Like, if I were able to get up into P2, or if I were just able to bring it home in P3, the results would have been fine for me since I haven't been on podium yet. So it would have been a really good result. So I guess we'll see how that all pans out as the race goes on. There was a little bit of concern about the weather, though, prior to our race starting, just because as we were waiting for our race to start and watching some of the other groups go ahead of us, it did start raining at some point, and so we were worried that we would have to drive this track on some slick, wet conditions, right? Which wouldn't have been ideal, of course. However, at the very least for me, I don't think it would have been the worst, because I did have a practice session here a while back, which was during absolutely horrendous conditions. It was pretty much torrential downpour, and there were like actual rivers on the track. So the conditions don't really get any worse than that. And I think throughout all of that, I actually learned quite a bit about, you know, wet weather karting, developing a bit of karting control throughout all of that, and yeah, just overall technique, wet line knowledge and whatnot. So it definitely instilled quite a bit of confidence in me should the occasion occur where we have to drive a wet race. But either way, driving a wet track would not be ideal, like I mentioned before, and it's definitely better to be on a nice dry track like it is during this race today. So as you can see, as we finish up lap 1, you can see P4 was actually almost alongside me, coming up the start-stop straight. And that's actually something that I ended up kind of battling with throughout the majority of this race. And I think it was just overall karting performance. And I'm honestly willing to like admit any faults of my own, like whether it be just a lack of experience, just making mistakes and whatnot. Because again, I'm not a very experienced driver. This is my first season ever doing kart racing before, so it could easily just be me, you know, just making some mistakes. But I will say, though, that the kart that I was driving for this race definitely did not feel anywhere near as good as the kart that I drove for the pre-final and even the practice session as well. I felt as if I was having some issues with traction. You can just see coming through the S's was pretty much my Achilles heel. Like, I was just getting really bad wheel spin, a lot of like grip loss and whatnot, and I also felt like I was having some braking pressure issues, as if there might have been a bit too much free play in the brake pedal, to where I just wasn't getting proper braking pressure going through the corners. and just overshooting my braking points by quite a bit. So there were a lot of issues like this that I was just kind of struggling with, just grappling with throughout the entirety of the race. And it was just bringing my overall confidence that I built up over the whole day to a pretty big low, I'd say. And I ended up having to shift my attention away from the drivers up ahead and kind of focus more and more on P4 behind me, which is definitely not something you want to be doing, right? So at this point, I'm just dropping off. You can see that on lap 2, I set up 51.545, which is about 4 thousandths of a second faster than my pre-final best time. So that lap was alright, it wasn't too bad, but you can just see the dramatic difference here with lap 3 with a 51.9, several tenths off. You can see them just slowly dropping off, and P1 and P2 are just getting further and further away in the distance. So this quickly turned into a very defensive race here. So I was definitely very worried and was just constantly checking behind to make sure that P4 wasn't going to make any moves. So you can see P4 is very close at this point. As we come into the S's, again, I just get a very bad line, and you're going to see right here, P4 sends a daring overtake right up the outside of the corner there and gets the move done quite easily. Now into P3, you can see that P5 is currently alongside me. So I try to take a wide line into the hill, and then he just sends it up the inside there, making a very daring overtake, gets the move done easily. And you can see I'm just moving backwards as this race progresses, which is definitely not great. At this point, I was not feeling comfortable at all, and I was just trying to adapt as much as I could to the kart, and just try to adjust what I was doing throughout the race. So as you can see, as we finish off lap 5 here, tucking into the slipstream of the driver in P4, coming through the S's here, trying to hang with P4 here. You can just see on the lap times a 53, like 2 seconds slower than any of my other times previous. So you can just see that things are not going well here. You can see P4 makes a daring overtake. He kind of overshoots it, and P3 manages to regain his position here. As a result, I pull up alongside P4. I try to make a move here, try to keep it clean. P4 did end up going wide. I'm currently in P4 right now, but he has the inside for this corner. On the final lap, I tried to make a cutback here, but then P6 comes out of nowhere and then makes contact here. So that slowed me down, and then, you know, I have a drag race with P6, passing the finish line in P5 here. And that was pretty much the race. It got pretty intense there on the last lap. Even the second to last lap, it got pretty touchy. But yeah, you can just see that overall this result was not favorable for me. I ended up going backwards, finishing in P5. Still not a horrendous result. This is pretty standard for me, I'd say. Kind of finishing around P5, P4 range. I would like to make an improvement at some point. So whether it be me just having an extra practice session, or, you know, just getting a bit of luck, I guess, through these races. Whatever can try to improve my pace and, you know, adapt to a lot of these dynamic conditions a little bit better. I definitely need to take advantage of that. But yeah, I think overall, despite the results, it was still a fun race. Again, was not very comfortable with the kart. I feel like this was the worst I felt throughout the whole day. Not because of the results, but just the overall driving performance. But yeah, I feel as if I could have potentially passed P4, but yeah, that contact between me and P6 dramatically reduced my momentum. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully we get some better results for the next race. Anyway, take care.